Hi, I'm Greg Hitchcock of Greg Hitchcock Communications, and we are in Gloversville, New York. Gloversville can get really cold in winter. It is usual to get freezing temperatures, especially in January, with a high of 26.6 degrees Fahrenheit, with an average low of 15.3 degrees Fahrenheit. There are an estimated 100 homeless people in Fulton County, with 90% in the city of Gloversville alone. Today I'm talking with the Reverend Richard Wilkinson and his wife Stephanie about the needs of the homeless during the winter months. Tell me, how many people are in Fulton County that are considered homeless or on the edge of homelessness?
The study that we started this summer, we kind of ended towards the beginning of the ending of the fall months where it was really starting to get cold and we kind of weren't able to track. Um, we have a little bit over 100 for Fulton County, but close to 90 of those are right here in Gloversville. And what we have found in talking to them is that a lot of the reason they're here is because this is where a lot of services are offered, right? Like I just said, they can have a meal at least 5 days a week. Before COVID, it was at least a hot meal. You know, COVID has changed how some places serve, but they're still able to get food. This is where the services are. This is kind of the hub of Fulton County, so to speak. And so the 90% of what we were able to identify through our work this summer is right here locally.
And the homeless numbers are very fluid. Since our church has gotten a name for being for helping the homeless, we get phone calls weekly of people that are being evicted, being kicked out of their house. They're sleeping on their friend's couch, and their friend's tired of it. Just last week, we got a call from somebody who lived down in Florida, whose daughter was sleeping on her friend's floor and was getting kicked out. So the numbers are very fluid. They're forever changing, but it's a pretty high number for such a small city.
Well, the housing stability in general
And
in this
Gloversville is
area
awful.
is very very poor. Because you consider unstably housed as someone that is couch surfing, they don't have an address. They maybe live in a house that isn't really meant for human habitation. You know, just because you have a roof over your head and you're paying a little bit of rent doesn't mean that where you're staying is actually, you know, for children and families. So we were looking mostly at just the homeless factor of it, but if you were to include those unstably housed, the couch surfers and those kind of things, the number I think would shock even us.
Can you explain to me what a code blue shelter is? What exactly is that?
So Code Blue shelters, anytime the weather is below 32 degrees, we're open for temporary shelter. So we're open from 6 p.m. to about 8 a.m. in the morning. We offer a warm bed to sleep in, snacks, meals, that kind of thing. We offer showers. Our facility here has a shower facility because it's an old YWCA. So basically, we offer somebody a warm place to stay when the temperature is just unbearable.
Is that something that a municipality is mandated to provide?
So yeah, so the state government back in 2016 or 17, Governor Cuomo mandated that every county must have a Code Blue plan in place. Right now, what Fulton County's plan is to transport them somewhere, put them up in a hotel for Code Blue nights, which is extremely expensive for the county anyway. But a lot of people are afraid. We've found a lot of people are afraid because they get their services here, they know this area, and they're afraid if they're taken somewhere else, they're not going to be brought back. So a lot of people are afraid to even get into that process because they don't want to disappear from Gloversville. So while yes, the county is mandated to do that, the way they do it is not cost effective at all, and it's also very scary for the people here. Like Stephanie said, they have a hard time trusting, especially people in the system. A lot of them have been burned by the system, and so they don't want to go. And not only that, they have to get to social services, which is down in Johnstown. So they would have to walk or take a taxi from Gloversville down to Johnstown.
Have you provided code blue shelters in the past before?
So we were open in 2020. We opened in the end of February. By the time we got through all the city's hoops, we opened in 2020, and we were open until April. So for a couple of months that year, we housed 18 different people. We actually did more than just code blue work. We did some social work with them. We helped several get in housing. We had one gentleman who had all sorts of mental health issues, and we were able to get him help and get him on medication. We actually helped get him into St. Mary's Health, and then he came back to us, and he was a completely different person on his medication, and we were able to help him get into housing once he got to that point. And as far as I know, last time I saw him was this summer. He's still in housing today. He's still stable, and it's all because we had a code blue shelter downtown.
Can you tell me a little bit about, you mentioned that they don't want to be noticed, or, they don't want to be noticed by the public and stuff like that. Is that because of the stigma attached to homelessness? Is that part of the reason that they want to be
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason. I think part of it is it's not just a stigma, in what we found out in going around this summer doing our, outreach program work. People would walk by and never notice they were there, but when they saw us talking to them, they would stop and talk to us, but not them. They would say hi to the women that are talking to them, or want to stop and make sure we were okay, but not actually talk to them as a person. And so they know that we've been fighting to open this. They are very privy to that information. They very much are in the know. Before we even filed the lawsuit, were telling us that that's what we needed to do. Don't stop fighting for them, So they feel the city leadership doesn't care about them. And so if you felt that the people that were elected to care for you weren't doing that, you'd probably hide too. So.
Well, and there's a real cultural bias towards poverty, and the homeless population is kind of the ultimate of the poverty, and so they feel that bias. They understand that people don't like them, people are afraid of them. It's funny, our guys used to hang out up here at the pavilion, the farmers market pavilion, and they actually hid a broom in the bushes so that when they were there, if there was a mess, they could clean it up.
They would come every morning
and the city actually moved the tables that they would hang out because they didn't want the homeless people hanging there, even though the homeless people cared more for that pavilion than I think anybody else in the city. So there's this really negative stigma towards the homeless, and when it comes down to it, they're just people like the rest of us. They want the same things the rest of us want. They want security, they want food, they want to be loved, they want to know that somebody cares about them. And but and it's culturally, it's not just here, it's everywhere. It's a cultural bias, cultural phenomenon that we have this bias towards the poor. And the homeless really, they feel that.
what's the, you're saying, they want to stay here in this area because they have their social services here, and they wouldn't want to go anywhere else outside of this Gloversville city, is that correct? Is that what you're saying again?
Well, yeah, and I mean, a lot of them, this is what they know. This is their home. We were talking to one gentleman who, the church has actually been working with two of the homeless gentlemen, and we've gotten them housing. We've got a program in the church called Steps to Success, where we help them kind of get a leg up and try to move them from the street to working members of society. And we were able to secure housing vouchers, but not in Fulton County, in Montgomery County. And, you know, he thanked us, but, you know, Gloversville is what he knows. It's where all his friends are. It's, you know, where it's his home.
Yeah, I mean, it would be like, you know, making a decision to move your family to another city. It's not done willy-nilly. You know, you would think about it. You would weigh all the possibilities. And so, if nothing else, they are a big family. The homeless population that we have encountered are a family. That's the only family some of them have. They look out for each other. And so, like Rich was saying, this isn't just what they know and where they know the best way to get services and what they have access to, but this is where their connection is, where their family is. And so to be taken like to Schenectady, because right now I think that that's where if they were to go to DSS to get housing during a code blue night, they would be transported to Schenectady. So you're going to fall asleep somewhere in the dark in a hotel and wake up to a city that you don't know anything about. You don't know where you can go and get something to eat that day. You don't know anyone. And so that is very much out of a comfort zone. And that would be that way for anybody. You know, none of us would want to be taken somewhere we weren't comfortable with and then wake up somewhere we didn't know and have to figure it all out, you know, first thing.
This is considered a NIMBY kind of response, right, from the public?
Yes, yeah.
Not in my backyard?
Yep.
Is there a lot of homeless that are also veterans, that they're our nation's heroes, that could be
Oh,
We've
yeah.
got several. I'm working with one right now, and we actually talked with the VA last week, and there's a lot of different things that he'll qualify for, and so we're trying to work to try and see what we could get for him, and then, you know, once we kind of learn the system with the first one, then we'll know some of the things that we have to offer others. And so part of the, like we said, the trust issue, it's going to take a couple that are willing to step out of a comfort zone and trust us a little bit to help them. And then the others are starting to see the help we're able to get them, and then they're coming to us for help. So it's kind of spiraling, you know, it's like a ripple in the water. There's the initial, and then it kind of ripples out from there. So, you know, I think that there's a lot that are still watching us to see what we're able to do for these couple that were so brave to come and allow us to continue to work with them. And then as they're starting to see things get accomplished, then they, because they trust us, are willing to work through that process with us. And it's not just sitting down at a desk and filling out paperwork or answering questions, you know, like it's a genuine care for who they are and what they need and what they want for their life.
What would happen, what would be the outcome if people just started to neglect this problem or try to disregard the issue of homelessness in our communities? What would happen to the people? What would happen to the community itself if we just decided to push them aside or something?
Well, my first fear this year, because we have a listing of actual names, and these are actual people that we've sat and we've met and we know. My first fear this year is because we know that there's this number, is if someone dies because of the cold, we're going to know it because they're a person to us now. They're no longer unknown. Whereas before they were still kind of an unknown. And so now, you know, when we open ourselves to help them, they become part of our family too. And so now we're gonna, you know, if that happens, we're gonna lose a piece of us as well.
And this year is going to be worse than most because there's a lot of new homeless this year. Because of the pandemic, there's a lot more people out on the street that aren't. There was a group of seasoned homeless that kind of knew how to deal with this, but now there's this group of new homeless people that have never been on the streets before, and with the cold temperatures, they're the ones that aren't going to understand or aren't going to know how to handle themselves in this. And so that's, I think this year we could see more problems than we've seen in the past.
More children.
There's more children on the street.
There's going to be a lot more children.
Is that because of the economic upheaval of COVID?
Right. Well, and you know, now that you know, landlords will start to be able to evict. I mean, we have just last week 2 families that contacted my coworker and I about as of January 1st they're going to be evicted, and one, she's got some young kids and the woman's pregnant, and you know, and we're doing the best we can to try and help, but you know, it's still a process. I mean, we're not magicians, and even though we can be a little more of a barrier, or not a barrier, but like an advocate between these people and DSS, which they're scared of. You know, we can be the middleman and kind of help them. We still can't make the paperwork go through any faster, you know, so they're still not guaranteed somewhere right now if they're not willing to pack up their family and go get transported to Schenectady for a night.
Homelessness can happen to anybody, is that correct?
Oh yeah.
No matter what background they are, or
Absolutely.
no matter what economic level they
Yeah.
be.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
it could happen in a day. You know, it doesn't take.
We had a family over the summer that they were living in an apartment here in the city, and somebody brought bed bugs into the apartment, into the building, not their apartment, into the building, and infested the entire building. So they were forced to leave their house, they were forced to leave all of their belongings behind, and they didn't get their security deposit back. The husband had a job, he worked, and they ended up living in a building here in town, and he would get up every morning and he would go to work, and it took a couple months to get him.
He would ride his bike to
Yeah,
work.
it took a couple months for them to get back on their feet, but you know, they weren't drug addicts, they weren't
Alcoholics.
you know, alcoholics, they weren't intentionally homeless, they just were put in a bad situation, and there weren't services really to help them in the city. I think it's easier to ignore the problem, it's easier to sweep it under the rug than it is to deal with it.
Yeah.
And part of the problem is if we deal with it, then we admit that there is a problem.
Right. Well, and then you take on a sense of responsibility to fix it.
You know, we're a small church, people are like, well, why don't you pay for their housing? You know, we're a small church and we don't have a lot of extra income. We're blessed with this building, and we're blessed that this is a building that in the past has housed people. It's an old YWCA building. And so, I mean, we're just excited that we have this space that we can do that. You know, we read in, we're a church that proclaims Jesus Christ, and we don't just talk about him, but we are his hands and feet here. The gospel tells us that, you know, we are supposed to take care of the poor and the sick and those that are not housed and the orphan and the widow, and that's what we do. So this isn't just about us trying to help people, this is about how we worship.
That's your mission, that's your mission.
It is. It's our mission to be Jesus. One of my favorite church fathers is Francis of Assisi, and he says, preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words. And that's my mission, is to preach the gospel, not with words, but with our actions, and with how we treat others people, how we care for other people.
Thank you very much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.